Hello there. I'm Rob Hudson. I'm a member of the law firm Frost Brown Todd, and I'm one of the volunteers at the Northern Kentucky Bar Association. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the NKBA Legends Series, where we interview distinguished Northern Kentucky Greater Cincinnati lawyers. And we hope to elevate the profession with a particular focus on what it takes to succeed as an attorney, both personally and professionally. Today's program will be recorded and made available to help guide the next generations of lawyers in our region. Our Legend Series has at times featured families immersed in our legal profession in this region, but until today, we haven't had the privilege of presenting a husband-wife team. Today's Legends, Rob and Trudy Craig, have been married, practicing law in Northern Kentucky, Greater Cincinnati for more than 35 years. Raising three beautiful, successful children along the way. For the duration of that time, Rob's practiced with Taft Law as a litigator, and he served as managing partner of Taft's Northern Kentucky office for more than 2 decades. Taft is, of course, one of Greater Cincinnati's largest, most prestigious law firms, with deep roots here spanning more than a century. Trudy's distinguished career included state appellate and federal district court judicial clerkships, along with service at the Dinsmore and Katz firms. She now serves as in-house general counsel for Unifund, one of the country's leading financial management service companies. Rob and Trudy have been selected for this program really in part based on how their service and their relationships have consistently uplifted those around them. At Dinsmore back in the day, for example, Trudy was the attorney other associates could go to for great advice. And that's the type of lawyer and person who can reach the heights of our profession, and really she's done just that. Meanwhile, with Rob, for decades, Northern Kentucky has benefited from his humble, exemplary leadership and service. That's the type of lawyer who ends up leading an office of a major law firm. I think Rob and Trudy make a great team because they embody principled, centered servant leadership. Rob and Trudy, it's great to have you here today. We're honored you joined us, and welcome to the Legends Series.
Thanks, Rob. And with that introduction, that kind introduction, I think we should just end it right here.
No, it's just going to get better and better and better.
Rob, I want to thank you for the invitation. Truly honored that you considered us. I don't know that either of us are comfortable with the title of Legends, especially speaking to one, as I've indicated in my opinion. But we do feel that we've practiced for a long time, both of us over 40 years. Seems incredible to imagine. And that we have gained some insights, sometimes from our own pitfalls and stumbles, that we do feel allow us to share some constructive advice for other new and practicing lawyers. So hopefully we'll accomplish that goal today. Thanks again for the invite. We do appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. And that's what it's all about, is helping the next generations of lawyers to maybe understand some of our experiences and do better as a result. And we typically start these programs with some background information about your interests in life prior to the practice of law, and with that in mind, and we'll begin with you, Trudy. What were some of your influences prior to law school? Perhaps those that helped shape your decision to practice law, or what type of a lawyer you would become. And probably most of us can point back to a few special experiences or people in our lives who showed us the way.
So I feel very lucky to have been blessed with an incredible, I would say, thoughtful father who imbued me with the sense that, and mother for that matter, that imbued me with the sense that I could do anything. My father was a Depression child and grew up when things were very tough. He was a religious minority, and he felt very strongly that my brothers and I be able to support ourselves as professionals, no matter what would happen in the world. So very early on, he sort of pushed me to law. I'm not sure I wouldn't have pursued medicine, but as my brother did, but nonetheless, it was a very good decision and one I'm very, very thankful for. And he had very high goals for himself, achieving goals that you were always the best you could be and did the best you could do. I think two other people that once my career was sort of launched just out of law school. I clerked for a state appellate court judge, George Palmer, who was PJ of the First District, and then David Dowd in the Northern District, a federal court judge. And the former was a very liberal Democrat, the latter a very conservative Republican, and they both made strong impressions upon me that also with hard work, I could do anything I want, that politics or political party had nothing to do with achievement, and that I owed it to myself and my profession to be the best I could be. So I apologize, I'm chewing on a cough drop because I've had COVID, so I don't start coughing. I'm past it, so you can all take your masks off. But I would say by far those are my greatest influences. And early on, my own mother would say to me, you know, just imbue me with the sense that I could do anything I wanted. And I feel very grateful to them for that, and try to do the same with my own children, our own children.
Rob, how about your early influences?
I'm afraid my path to the law was a bit more serendipitous than Trudy's. When I was graduating undergrad, I knew that I didn't want to continue in school much longer. So I took a job in Washington, D.C. As an economist with what was then HEW. And at that time, I did take the LSAT before I left school, but I wasn't really sure that's what I was going to end up doing. But when I got to DC, I realized I needed another degree if I was going to do anything in DC. So, and I also think, well, maybe before then, John Houseman was an important role, and most people probably won't remember the paper chase, but that looked like a pretty cool thing to take on Harvard Law School. I didn't get into Harvard, but at any rate, that was kind of a challenge, and I decided I was going to be a lawyer. That's really how I got into the law, and I was fortunate to get into a good law school and have a number of really amazing professors at the University of Chicago. And then when I was looking all over the country, really coast to coast, and I decided to come back to Cincinnati, where I had grown up in Anderson, because I thought that I didn't want to live in a really big city, and I didn't want to have a big city practice. And Rob Hudson, unlike you, I know when you came to Cincinnati, that was the big city. And when I came back home, I felt like I was coming back to a small city or a big town, and that was really attractive to me. So that's kind of how I ended up in this.
Yeah, I remember being on the top row at Riverfront Stadium, thinking and commenting to a friend with me, isn't this just the greatest experience ever? You know, I've never seen anything like it. So yes, different perspectives. And Rob, I think you've already mentioned an interesting non-law job in DC, but any others for either of you that, you know, prior to practicing law that maybe influenced you or helped you down the road? Even if it's a job that just made you know you never want to do this for the rest of your life.
Not me. I hate to say I spent most of my undergraduate summers lifeguarding at Coldstream Country Club. I knew I couldn't do that the rest of my life.
And I kind of pushed through. I always worked through high school and college and law school. I was always a server. But I think it was always my father just indicating that you pull yourself up by hard work, and you're smart. God gave you a good brain and lots of talent, and you need to use it. And that belief in me is something that I really try to show my kids. So no, but I actually rushed through college a year early, and had I known how much fun it was looking backwards, I probably would have stayed another year. So,
well, once you became attorneys, and you both began as litigators. What caused you to gravitate or to begin your careers in the litigation arena?
Well, Rob, do you want me to jump in, or you want to start?
Well, again, it was, I think, as much a process of elimination for me. I just felt like lawyers who go to law school are litigators. That was, I didn't have a family member who was in the law, and it just felt like if you're going to practice law, being in the courtroom, and trying cases was what the practice of law was all about. And so when I started at Taft, and I'll say it was back in 1981, when the firm was about the same size as it is today. Frankly, it was about 100 people at the time, but I was assigned to the antitrust department, which was like litigation. It was litigation at the time, and that just is where I fit. Antitrust kind of disappeared, and we can talk about that later on. But I just enjoyed litigation from the get-go.
How about you, Trudy?
I think for me, it was my clerkships. I was avoiding, not avoiding, I was focusing in the appellate level when I first started on, what was happening in courts. And then I had the good fortune to have an incredible balanced panel of jurists, the best jurists in Cincinnati, I think, or some of the best we've ever seen. And to constantly constructively review what happened in the court below. So I learned a lot from that, and it sort of set me on that path. And then when I worked for Judge Dowd in district court, constantly, monitoring and being part of trials and settlement conferences and mediations, those kinds of things really just cemented the decision for me.
Well, Trudy, you had mentioned the judges playing a role as mentors in your development. Rob, did you have certain mentors that played a significant role in your early development as an attorney?
So it turned out John Houseman worked at Taft in the form of a gentleman named Murray Shipley Monroe, and Murray was the head of the antitrust department. And he took a kid who came in thinking he was on top of the world. I thought I owned everything, and quickly showed me how much I didn't know and how hard I had to work in order to be a successful lawyer, and also a successful lawyer at Taft. And there were other antitrust lawyers and litigators at Taft who over the years I was fortunate to work with. Bob Stackler, who was the head of the litigation department, comes to mind, who was an incredible lawyer and incredible in teaching a number of litigators at Taft and at other firms in the city. So they all had a big impact on me. And what they really impressed upon me was how much I didn't know and how hard I had to work in order to be a successful lawyer.
And so what were some of the keys to becoming a proficient lawyer in terms of practice competence from your perspective first, Trudy?
Well, one thing I remember clerking for both Judge Palmer and Judge Dowd, they had very high expectations, very, very smart men. And they were always driven not by their political views, but by the law. And they expected me to apply the same kind of dedication and almost compulsive attention to detail and to what the law was. And I can remember several instances. One stands out particularly with Judge Dowd. I was going to a wedding in Chicago, and he had an opinion he wanted done. And there were people that were waiting on that decision. And he said to me, that opinion, he didn't say, don't go to that wedding. He said, that opinion needs to be done and on my desk on Monday. And, I knew what that meant. And I stayed and I finished my drafts of the opinion and worked really, really hard on it, understanding the consequences of it for the people involved. So they taught me both to focus, the importance of the work that you're doing. And I think both of them also felt that we have a higher degree of responsibility as lawyers, not just as law clerks or associates, but attorneys practicing society, that we have an obligation to lift up society because of the knowledge and the learnings that we have and our experiences. And I'm sort of lost my way a little for the question. I think you were asking
just about keys to becoming a proficient lawyer. And one of the things that you just focused on that's significance to me is early on someone impressing upon you the level of attention and work ethic required to meet expectations and become proficient. And yeah.
They set that expectation of me. And so I set it for myself. I mean, particularly working in courts, when you're reviewing, you get a box of evidence from a criminal trial. It's a murder trial. You got to take your time. You have got to take your time going through it, realize what's at stake for the people involved, and make sure you get it right. And the same thing at the federal district court. paying attention to what the people are seeing, understanding and being completely adept at negotiating the record, and then making certain that you understand the law that applies. And that applies to all of us as we continue to practice. But I think beyond that, both of them were so involved in our communities, in making sure, in living good lives, in being good participating members of our political system, that also gave me a focus for being the best lawyer I could be and a member of our respective communities.
Well, usually in these interviews, we spend a fair amount of time asking some pointed questions about different areas of focus. But I'd like to take a step back and ask just a more general question, and we can begin with Rob and follow up with Trudy. It would be terrific if you could just share with us some of your personal and professional advice based on your years of practice and experience. But beginning with Rob, if you have a few different aspects of your experiences in practice you could share with us, that'd be terrific.
So I think that it kind of all begins with we're professionals. We all went to law school for 3 years or more in order to have the privilege and also the right to practice law. We're licensed by the Supreme Court of Kentucky and Supreme Court of Ohio and wherever else we're barred. And it gives us responsibilities. And I think one of the big responsibilities that I'd like to think I've tried over the years to achieve is professionalism, which in my mind is more than just courtesy, it's competence. We used to have the zealous advocacy, and that kind of dropped out of the rules for good reason. But I think we're all still zealous in representing our clients because we're all pretty competitive, at least litigators. We're all inherently competitive and wouldn't be doing this if we weren't. And that implies yet more in terms of, being a professional means knowing what the heck you're doing. You better understand what the law is as it applies to a particular case. And I'm kind of an unusual litigator at Taft in that I'm like a utility baseball player sometimes, in that, we're a very small office in a large law firm. So we over here in Kentucky get a lot of different cases. And so, I used to do a lot of antitrust. I still do a little antitrust, securities, construction, labor law. Sometimes, Rob, I hate to tell you, I do a little employment law. And you have to master it. I guess the great thing that I have here at Taft is that when I don't know something, I do know who to call. And that's also a big thing, is sometimes knowing what you don't know and perhaps either backing away from it or at least developing the knowledge that you need in order to zealously represent your client. So I can stop there. There are other things that are entailed in professionalism, but that's kind of a start.
Trudy, words of wisdom on that front from you?
I don't know that they're words of wisdom, but they're certainly things I've learned. I think that I'm asked sometimes to speak to some large first-year classes, summer classes at law firms. And my advice, and I don't know that it's relevant necessarily to those watching this program, is always clerk if you can on a state or a federal court level, because I think it's incredibly valuable. And sometimes if you're a new attorney, you do have the opportunity to go back. There are clerkships that open up. You can be a federal district court clerkship or a bankruptcy clerk or even a career clerk these days. Work as a mediator for the Sixth Circuit. I think those opportunities are awesome and really broaden the landscape of your legal knowledge. You take what you learn in law school, and we learn so very, very much through this incredible method, but actually applying it can be very difficult. And this forces us to see how it applies in real life scenarios on a daily basis. So, and it gives you a real taste for the lawyers that are practicing in your community. You learn good and bad about people's skills and what approaches are effective and how people approach different problems. And that's really helpful. I think that it's very important early on to be mindful of the fact that you are a lawyer, you're licensed by the state, you're held to a certain standard, and that's something that should be we should be aware of every single day that we practice. We have a reputation as lawyers to be fair-minded and even-handed and objective in our approach to things. And I think that's something I learned from Judge Dowd and from Judge Palmer, that when we take our role in society, we don't have to be so partisan one way or the other. I think this is particularly relevant in this day and age, that we should help resolve conflict as lawyers, not create it. And so we should always be in search of the truth and the best solutions for our client and for the communities in which we live. In the course of our practices, we meet lots of people, and I think relationships are very, very important. We need to develop that from day one. My kids in their 20s and 30s, our kids, now I tell them, you may 20 or 30 years from now, you don't see it, go back and touch base with people you knew years ago. And you hate to be simply opportunistic. That's not the only reason for maintaining relationships, because you learn and grow from them, but they're valuable. And the reputation that you begin on day one when you start to practice is something that you control throughout your legal career, and it's something of which we should be mindful. There's lots of things, that the standard of practice, the legal knowledge, the professionalism, ethics. Ethics is, I think, very important. Wherever you find your moral compass, whether it's from your faith or your particular place of worship, or your parents, your family, your spouse, I think it's important that never leaves your legal practice, because you have lots of opportunity to make bad, unethical decisions. And I think that it's incumbent on all of us to stay the course and help our peers, reach out to our peers, stay the course too. I know I'm covering a lot of things, Rob. I guess these are the things that I really feel like I have to offer. I just offer one or two other things. In your personal life, volunteering, taking whatever your skill is and seeing how can you better the community in which you live, or people who are affected by your area of practice. Reaching out to other lawyers, sometimes it can be tough. I've spoken up when I didn't think something was right, when a colleague I thought was not making a great decision, or maybe could use a little bit different input. The older I get, but I learned to do it in a different way. I now offer it as, perhaps you might consider, instead of you're wrong. And that's helpful. But I do think that we have lots of opportunities every day as lawyers, as people, and our legal knowledge helps, inform all the things that we can do in our society to make it a better world in which to live. And that might sound Pollyannish, but I do truly believe that. And I know this is all a very long answer. I could go on a long time. I'm cutting out a lot to stop here, but I am going to stop.
Rob, at the risk of cutting you off, let me just add one thing that Trudy kind of reminded me of, and that's this. I came back here because, I wanted to be in a small city, or a town that I felt was livable, and in a practice where when you walk down the street, you say hello to people because you know them. I mean, it's not a big city. And when you go into court, particularly here in Northern Kentucky, you know in practice with these people all the time. And your reputation and the way that you deal with other lawyers from the beginning of your practice until, the day you hang it up, is about relationships. And if you come across as a jerk, in my practice, I don't know who's on this, so I don't know that I should really say this, but you get sort of a one bite. I do a one bite policy, that everybody gets the benefit of the doubt. And that works really well here because, it's true what here in this small area, what goes around comes around. And Rob and I have been up against each other in a number of cases over the years, and I think we've built up trust amongst each other, and certainly respect. And that's, that's across the board with every lawyer that we deal with. So think about your reputation and how you want to be perceived in court, by the bench, but in particular by the other lawyers you're dealing with, because in the long run, building up that trust is what's going to be of benefit in terms of, and what we do is dispute resolution. We're just trying to help our clients in litigation resolve a disagreement. And generally speaking, being able to work with your adversary, it's a lot easier, certainly a lot more efficient for your client to have had those relationships. Now,
if you don't mind the colloquy and the back and forth here, I'll jump in with something that Rob's comments spurred in my own mind. When I first clerked in appellate court, of course, you're reviewing if it's criminal, a box of evidence, if it's civil, all the briefs. But when I clerked in federal district court, sometimes I'd see incredibly heated battles, very, very bright lawyers, maybe from the same town, maybe from different parts of the country. And then when the hearing was in recess or the trial was in recess or the jury was dispatched to the jury room, they'd approach each other and they'd be very collegial and engage in conversation. And sometimes they'd talk about how the case was going or things for each other. That was a surprise to me. I hadn't seen that. You know, I'd seen these heated battles, I'd seen appellate courts, I'd seen trials. And what I came quickly to learn is that you may, as a lawyer representing a client, then have the opportunity to reach out to the attorney on the other side. You need a little more time for something. Perhaps there's a case you'd like to bring to their attention, so maybe they consider dropping a particular claim, or you know, you can talk about, look, there's no reason for us to go to a motion to dismiss because XYZ, I have this evidence. And it can be very helpful for your client to have those sorts of relationships if you know that you're developing them from day one. So 100% endorse what Rob was saying.
Well,
thank you.
As far as, go ahead, Rob, I'm sorry.
That particular point.
I was second. Go ahead, Rob. Rob H., you go ahead.
No. If you have something to add on that subject, go ahead. This is your program. And anything to add, Rob?
I just was thanking Trudy for agreeing with me.
Okay. Yeah, both of you, when you think back to when you were a new lawyer, and you might know a few people, but maybe not all that many. And you're with a firm, but you also know you have, you know, responsibility to develop and nurture contacts and to grow business, even if it's just growing business from an existing client. What were keys to your success in either developing and nurturing contacts or developing business? Beginning with Rob. Rob, how did you go about that?
So it's hard to believe, but when I joined Taft in 1981, associates were not supposed to generate business. We were supposed to execute the business that had been brought to the firm by partners and a number of institutional clients. And so, and this is kind of funny, but when I joined the firm in 1981, we were just getting business cards because some of the older lawyers thought that that was a form of advertising, which was very distasteful at the time. I mean, it's a different place now at a different time, but that's the way it was. And then obviously expectations changed, and now at least bringing business at a law firm like Taft, it isn't the first order of business for young associates who need to you know, develop a number of practice skills in their whatever areas they're in, but it is something that is strongly encouraged as you go along in your career. So, you know, for me, a lot of the clients that I work with are from outside of the Cincinnati area or outside of Northern Kentucky. And so it's really developing relationships with lawyers at other firms, some clients that, you know, are returned, but in litigation, you know, it's kind of sometimes those clients are going to have cases in, say, Indianapolis, and they'll come to me, and then I'll say, well, we have a good lawyer in Indianapolis. That's kind of the way my practice has developed, a lot of it outside of the area.
Well, Trudy, any advice as to a newer lawyer as to how to really develop and nurture contacts, you know, beyond just direct client development, and whether that played a significant role in your career?
Definitely. And Rob, I think sometime I'm going to remind you of something. Rob has been an incredible volunteer over the years. He was president of Hawksworth for 3 years. He's been on the it's called the Cincinnati Arts Association for a number of years. He's from our synagogue board. He was on, I mean, in almost every area of the community. He has been involved in a lot of community service that has in some part resulted in referrals. And sometimes it can be attenuated. Somebody mentions to somebody, but they know, I know somebody, I work with so-and-so. And so I think that, you know, you should do those things because they're the right thing to do, but know that also what you do will result, the more context you have, the more people think of you as a lawyer. I volunteered a lot through my career in our children's schools and in education enrichment, arts enrichment, particularly memorializing the testimony of World War II soldiers and liberators and things that aren't necessarily going to lead to context. They do frequently lead to requests for legal referrals. Anywhere from somebody in domestic relations, divorce matters, custody matters, banking matters, estate matters. I know, for example, and I have to say, Rob and I almost never talk law. And I couldn't tell you, I probably couldn't name, except for some of his national clients, I just couldn't name more than a couple. But I know that we've had people that have turned to him as a result of, you know, just doing certain kind of work and of a certain standard. And then people say, who do you know that does this? And sometimes Rob does it. And sometimes he might refer to Rob Hudson or to someone else. That's another reason for saying closely connected in the legal community. You know, we all have to know the bounds of what we can and can't do. Sometimes when we start off, you want to take on a lot of things and that can be a little bit dangerous. Particularly, I think the law is becoming a lot more specialized and particularized with the advent of technology and data analytics than it was when we first started law school. But nonetheless, you develop contacts and professional relationships that allow you to know who is a good person, who do I ask to find who is a good person in this particular field. So it works both ways. You find contacts for other people and they turn to you for things. And so that's very, very helpful. Speaking. I think it's important to speak in your field. I used to speak quite a bit on certain areas. And now I'm doing it more for things that I like. I told you today I spoke to a consumer group about how to pull themselves up from bad financial situations. And I'm doing a series on that. That's more just because I'm interested in it. But there's lots of speaking opportunities, whether it's your local bar or, you know, I'm solicited all the time as a general counsel to speak at professional organizations. I talked to someone at UC the other day that was interested in a speaker on a particular topic. Those are good ways to develop clients, even your social contacts. And no, I have to say this, know that as an attorney, again, I think we're held to or should hold ourselves to a higher standard. You know, you're a public servant, you're an officer of the court, and Rob and I will sometimes joke about that, but it's actually a very, very serious role. That the way you hold yourself out in public is very important. And I think it's something we need to be mindful all the time. But just being the person I will tell you, just being, I guess I can even say this, when I volunteered at my kid's school, just appearing a certain way, speaking a certain way, dealing with people a certain way, certainly led me to receive requests for a legal representation. So I think those are all things that can help you develop business contacts.
That's terrific.
Contacts.
Well, Rob, changing gears just a little bit, you know, with your service as member in charge of TAF's Northern Kentucky office, what, if you could share with us your perspective on what that was like, you know, any special challenges associated with that role, you know, on top of your daily responsibilities as a litigator and a member of the firm to have that responsibility?
So we have always had kind of an interesting model for client service from our Kentucky office, in that we are purposefully small. Right now we're 6 lawyers. I think when we started, we were 3. And so what we have, though, is a very large Kentucky practice because of the number of lawyers in Cincinnati who are admitted in Kentucky and who actively practice over here. So one of the real challenges was acting like we had a bigger footprint than we really did, which always required, getting involved in the community and lots of different things. But also, I used to joke, but it was true. I practiced from, and still do, from Pikeville to Paducah. So, and the good thing about a national practice in some ways, I don't know that this would be replicated, but people in New York or LA, they hardly know where Kentucky is. And they certainly don't know how far Owensboro is from Northern Kentucky. But, I've spent a couple of years on a big case in Owensboro for a client who I think they probably realized that there was a little distance there. But I mean, you did have to cover a lot of geography sometimes, but also then keeping people who have particular practice skills over in Cincinnati engaged in developing practices over here in Kentucky. I think that was a challenge also, but it worked out well.
I would say I've had friends from law school even reach out, same as Rob talks about. Well, Kentucky, we've got a case in Kentucky. Well, I put them in touch. I'm not in private practice with Rob, or same with Ohio. I went to school at Boston University. They think it's, all Appalachia to them. I mean, they have no idea. It doesn't matter. It could be Toledo or it could be Owensboro, but and nonetheless, those have sometimes proven valuable contacts. They've come from very, very good attorneys at very good firms. I know Rob's had a number of national matters that he's gotten that way. And so you never know. I tell my children, you don't have to make everyone your friend, but there's no reason to treat, and I know this, this is sort of a momism, but it should be a peopleism. There's no reason to treat anyone with less than respect, even if you disagree on things. And in the end, you hope that more often than not, that comes back to help you.
Well, and Trudy, it occurred to me that I think you're the first in-house general counsel who's participated in the program. And hearing your perspective on the differences between being in private practice with a firm and being a litigator and serving in a much broader role as in-house general counsel for a substantial company. I mean, how did you kind of get there from being a member level litigator, and what are the differences in your day-to-day?
Well, I will say this, unfortunately, no one from my office is on this, to my knowledge, is on this webinar, but I probably work more hours now than I did in my 20s. And part of that is self-driven. It's just who I am and what I do. But Rob and I have 3 children. Our oldest son had a health problem, a congenital heart defect, and was forced to take off a couple of years. And Rob was very supportive, and there were reasons that I had to be the one that had to take off, and happily did that and rethought my career goals and went back as I was able. I've now worked part-time as a contract attorney, and I've been home full-time for a small number of years. And in the course of that, I reached out to different contacts who gave me great opportunities to work even as a contract attorney. And then we were at a social event, and someone said to me, a friend actually, said, hey, come in and manage our litigation part-time, 4 hours a day. Sounded awesome to me, right? My kids would be at school or they'd be napping, easily could contain it. I agreed. Of course, that wasn't the case, and there were many long hours at night. But that ultimately led to my succeeding my predecessor, who was general counsel for my company. Now, it was a great entree for me as a litigator because it gave me real knowledge about the company's day-to-day operations. But one thing I've learned since, and I belong to the Association of Corporate Counsel, and I urge anyone that is going to become a general counsel or thinking about it to look up that organization and or attend their events. I'm not sure you have to belong just to attend single events, or reach out to me. I learned that a lot of people in private practice are with firms that have corporations as their clients, and sometimes they're poached by the corporations to become general counsel. So, and sometimes not poached, sometimes it just works out that way. I know that for some of our sports teams in town, they've had attorneys or their counselor have come from the firms that represented them. I think you have to be mindful. Again, it's back to relationships that can always happen. For me, it happened through a social relationship. Somebody that knew that litigation was my bailiwick and something that I knew, like the back of my hand, but it did lead to something more. So again, that's one way to do it. Another is, I think that Association of Corporate Counsel is a great organization, Kentucky, Ohio, nationally. I don't get any kickback for this. They have lots of opportunities and post them on their websites and offer a lot of great CLEs and great opportunity to meet people that are in-house if you're looking to move in-house. And you develop, again, a network, you volunteer, you become an officer, or even your local bar, for example. And that gives you contact with a lot of people that are in-house, and the path can be very natural, I think. You just apply, or people think of you and reach out.
Yeah. And what are the day-to-day differences? And your perspective must be different as an in-house general counsel, versus your prior roles, I would think.
Yes and no. I have great outside counsel and with different firms in town, and we kind of spread that out for lots of reasons. Cincinnati lawyers are as good, and when I say Cincinnati, I mean Cincinnati area. Let me say Northern Kentucky lawyers, including Cincinnati, are as good as any attorneys in the country. So I'm very lucky to be able to reach out to a great network. But sometimes you have to put in a lot of hours to understand what you need. And it takes you a while just to work your way through referrals to get to the right person. Law is increasingly specialized, particularly in the fintech area. And that's a lot of hard work. But there's a give and take there. I've helped people get new clients and move into new areas. They've helped me, with great relationships. Even put me in touch with regulators as I've needed, and helped conversations that have been very, very beneficial to my company. So, but at day to day, I would say that my day is very much, it's always been a very long day. I start very early, and one of the problems with digital communication is I tend to work late because we all get, updates, email updates, and everybody has my mobile and everybody texts. And so we have sort of an Instagram function between members of our community. So,
indeed, right. And well, switching gears a bit, I think both of you've referred to your community service and your commitment to the community in that regard. But Rob, what have been some of your favorite opportunities to serve, and why did they become your favorites?
So.
And I ask you this knowing that you're like the most humble person on the planet.
Well, I'll offer some up, Rob. I would say, and in choosing what lawyers get involved in, I think you kind of have to follow, at least I have to enjoy it. I mean, I have to really have fun with it, and it has to be something I can get passionate about. And so Hawksworth was a great experience because, I mean, who doesn't love blood, right? But in terms of,
okay.
I was involved for a long time with Leadership Northern Kentucky at the Chamber, and really enjoyed it because of every year you'd meet new and really interesting people who had amazing stories, and, kind of help them get introduced into the community, and then also watch them fly afterwards. Or they were flying before and then just happened to touch LNK for a little while. But I really enjoyed that, and kind of stopped doing it and then got back involved in it again. But now I'm off again. And then there was something that I don't even remember how I got involved in it, but many years ago, I was asked to get involved in something called the Northern Kentucky Symphony, which is now the Kentucky Symphony Orchestra. But at the time, it was tiny. I mean, it might have been like a $30,000 a year budget. And to be really intimately involved in the growth of that organization was incredibly fun. J.R. Cassidy, who is the has always been the head of it, has always been audacious and dragged this conservative lawyer along to do some really fun and crazy things to help grow that. So it's kind of at this point fun because I'm not involved in it anymore, but I can at least look at it and say, this is really cool how far along it's come, and to see that organization become what it is in the community today. Those are.
But I see that Mr. Knoll has addressed a question.
Oh, please, go ahead.
And I'm not sure if I've asked you back, sir, I'm not sure I completely understand it, but you've asked how to decide whether to do hourly billing or another billing model. I'm assuming that if this is the wrong assumption, please advise or give us the slant that you want. But I'm assuming you're in private practice or maybe setting up your practice and figuring out how to do things. So once again, this goes to making relationships. And, Rob has mentioned he mentioned the symphony and Hawksworth and some of the other things within the bar, Leadership Northern Kentucky, Leadership Cincinnati, any practice groups that you have. Just I'll come back to it in a minute if you'll remind me, Rob. I was in the Judicial Candidate Rating Committee when I first started, but all those things, day in, day out, serving with people gave me opportunity to know people that I could trust their judgment. So what I would say to you is, and Rob, you asked about I'm digressing here, so I hope you all can follow this bouncing ball. The one thing I hated about private practice was billing, and I've billed in 6-minute increments and 15-minute increments, and I hated billing. Even though I work probably more hours now, I hated it. But I would say talk to people, talk to clients, and talk to other attorneys. And where would you talk to them? People that you get to know through the bar. There's something called the Inn of Court, which is awesome. Rob and I did that. And it's really a great opportunity if you can do it. Judges, if you don't have a matter before them, they are amenable to just talking with you, and you will be surprised. Cincinnati and Northern Kentucky judges are amenable to helping you be the best lawyer you can be, and they will help you. What I found most prevalent, I'll be honest, and Mr. Knoll, is the point 0.1, but it's really irritating. I hate it. I found myself when I first started billing, I'd be doing laundry, and in my head, I'd be thinking, okay, I spent 0.2 on that. I should have only spent 0.1. It just made me crazy. It overtook my life. But people can help you with that. And they may say, on a brief, having practiced a long time, I know what an appellate brief should cost me in a particular area. So they may say, look, bill hourly on this matter. One thing I do suggest is that there's a clarity with your clients up front as to what your rates are and what you anticipate something might be. If you're not sure, you want to make sure that if you tell someone that an appellate brief is going to be, $10,000, that you don't end up then billing them for 20. So you may have to, if you're a new lawyer, either have to eat some of that or figure out a way to be more efficient. But again, I would turn toward folks in your local bar association. Inn of Court is an awesome, awesome organization for you to join, to meet practitioners that can help mentor you. And I would seek mentors. I've mentored many, in particular, more young women than young men, but mentored many new lawyers. And I'm honored. And when someone asks me, either would you not formally mentor me, but maybe have lunch, or could we talk about a couple things, or I have a few things that I'd like to know. And I found that I've still, even at this stage of my career, turned to other lawyers to help me make good ethical decisions. Sometimes or even ask me, I faced an issue about going to a federal regulator, and I talked to other attorneys nationally, probably half a dozen, about how to approach the problem. And that was really, really awesome for me. So back again to relationships, and I say do the least painful for you. Just advise your clients upfront and be honest and round down. If you have 11 minutes, don't bill for 20. So, but that's my advice on that.
That's terrific. And we have approximately 11 minutes left, and we're gonna make excellent use of the time. We work in this profession that is conflict laden. We have glorious victories. We have crushing defeats. We have disappointments. We work with disagreeable people and lovely, wonderful people.
Why did we become lawyers? When I listen to this description,
others might say, of course, that's true in any profession or in any job. That's just the nature of how things go. our focus, Rob Ziegler, who's the current president of the NKBA, part of his focus is on trying to provide resources for mental health. And I think it's important that we try to touch on that in the Legend series. And part of it just involves managing stress and adversity. And I'd be turning first to Rob, and not suggesting for a moment that you have extraordinary stressors or adversity, but how do you manage through those bumps in the road in your life and in law? Because you've had tremendous longevity in the profession. You might have a secret or two to impart today. What do you think?
So I try to approach everything, Rob, with a sense of humor and also a sense of perspective. I think one of the things that, particularly when Trudy and I first, when we had our family starting, she often had to remind me, and it finally dawned on me that we don't live to work, we work to live. And that really was an important, it obviously is really a simple thing, but I mean, you know, we have lives outside of the practice. Yeah, yes, we're lawyers. Yes, it's a demanding practice, but we need to make sure that we also keep an eye on our lives and where we fit into the practice, but where we fit into our community. And I hate to say it, but I tend to try to look for things that I enjoy. I don't always do the things that I need to do. I look for the things that I enjoy so that when stressful events occur, I can put it into perspective and I can say, you know, well, okay, I can go spend a lot of time with my family, or I can go play a really bad game of golf, or I can, you know, be involved in a community organization that I find very rewarding, and take myself out of the practice of the law for a while. And I think Trudy and I also, I hope I help with Trudy on perspective, but she certainly helps me in keeping focused on, you know, what are the important things that we want to achieve with our lives. We're still kicking, you know. Yeah, I've been doing this for 40 years, but I'm doing it because I like it, and because it is still challenging. And so you have to keep also looking towards the future in terms of what is it you want to continue to accomplish. So I guess trying to keep things in perspective. And then I also slough things off. If I get bit, then so be it. Or if I lose a case, which that does stick with me a little bit longer than the victories, but you know, you still have to just leave it behind. If you're going to practice and try cases, you're sometimes going to lose. It's just the way it is. It's the nature. Some people win and sometimes you lose. And the way Stackler would say it is sometimes you win and the other times you settle. So maybe that's a better rule.
Well, Trudy, from your perspective, how's the legal profession progressed through the years in terms of gender equity and equality? And you know, how do you, on this subject of, you know, mental health and maintaining a positive approach and balance, how do you handle it when bumps in the road occur on that subject? Because that's got to be very difficult. And, you know, frankly, it's not something that I can even, you know, completely understand or imagine. I can try, but it's not been my experience.
So addressing that in reverse order, I guess for me, and Rob and I are somewhat different this way. He can box things or contain them a little more than I can. I have to sort of talk them out and think them out. And for me, having people in my life that I can do that with is very, very helpful. Sometimes, you know, Rob, it will help me and say, you know, you have to keep perspective on the significance of what's bothering you here. Is this a big matter? Is this worth putting a lot into? If not, I've been very lucky, I think, and blessed in my marriage to have a husband that I sometimes, and I've explained this to my children, sometimes he'll help me see things a little more clearly and bring me to the middle of the road. And I'd like to think I can do that for him. And it doesn't have to be just a marriage. It can be a partnership, whether it's a romantic union or a civil union or a legal partnership or a mentor or a professor. I think it's important to have someone in your life that you know is going to help you see more clearly. And just sometimes just turn the light on for you to see the issues. And I think Rob does that for me. We don't talk law that often, but very occasionally we do. But I think generally in our marriage, and I think there are other people that do that for me in my legal and personal life as well. As far as how we've progressed toward women, I will just say, I think, you know, the whole world is changing for young men as well, who now can get up to 16 weeks, I think, at Taft as paternity leave. I think you have to have that balance in your relationship, regardless of what that relationship is, that one person has some flexibility, and that can just mean being able to shift schedules, but you have to figure out a way to do that. I would have thought the world would change more than it has now. I still frequently in the fintech space, in the financial arena, I'm the only woman on a call. Recently, I had it with some national banks. You know, my paralegal called me and said, when the associate from one of the banks called me to set up a dinner when this team was coming to town, and the associate was a young woman, my paralegal, who's from Brooklyn, New York, and has an awesome personality, said, "Why is she calling you? You're the vice president general counsel. Why is she calling you to arrange dinner? Why is she not, you know, blah, 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 blah." So I'm lucky to have people all around me that help me, you know, sort of keep some perspective. I shared with you previously, we did an acquisition of a Canadian company, and I had an attorney say to me at 8 o'clock at night, you know, or really asked why I wasn't home making dinner for my husband. And he rejoined that he was making dinner for me. And just I tried very, very hard not to let emotion, and I do this generally, not just on gender issues, not let emotion come into the picture. Later, he called me back, I'm sure at the behest of his fellow team members, and apologized. But I found that as a woman, there are people that will bait you. I've had people say, "Well, you're a Kentucky lawyer." Somebody, you know, from New York will call me and say, "This is a matter of New York property law." Or someone will say, "Well, you're a woman," that they just make assumptions in a very, it's you know, sort of oppressive way. And I think the best thing to do is not respond in kind, and just respond calmly and matter-of-factly. And, you know, first and foremost, I'm a person, I'm a lawyer, I'm a capable lawyer, and all of us should remember that about ourselves. We can handle these things, and then find people that can help talk you through it. And don't be reluctant. I'll leave this as the last point. Don't be reluctant to reach out to people around you, to sometimes, you know, offer a hand or a hand up, because we can all use that. I've had people that have reached out to me, not at my request, and you know what? That's been an awesome. It's been a huge assist in my life. So my answers tend to be longer than Rob's. I'm sorry, Rob.
No, we're
popping these cough drops.
And thank you, by the way, for doing this at a time when you're recovering from COVID. We appreciate that very much. And we're at our final question, and it has to do with final words of wisdom, wit, and advice for the next generation of lawyers in Greater Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky. So it's an opportunity to comment on something that maybe wasn't raised during our hour together, and we can close on that note. Rob, what do you think?
So I want to go back to another question that wasn't asked, which is, what do people not know about me? Because
okay, you can do that.
And I'll work it into you. I'll work it into you. And if you don't know this about me, it's only because you haven't talked to me about it, because I tell everybody about this. But my law partner, Rob Balot, is the subject of a wonderful movie that I recommend all lawyers watch. It's called Dark Waters, and it's an incredibly uplifting story to me, and about practicing law and the hard work that he put in an incredibly challenging case involving DuPont, which resulted in national and international implications because of some substances that DuPont was putting into the Ohio River. But that's okay. Watch the movie because it's great story about our profession. But you'll also now, since you see this face, you'll see me 4 times in that. And it was my honor to be a featured extra in that. So look for me. It's like looking for Waldo. Where's Waldo? Where's Rob in the movie? But the important thing is watch the movie because it's a great story and a great example of what being a lawyer is all about. Well, there's my plug for my partner. Oh, it never got the Academy Award that it deserved either.
I love that. It's a terrific movie. I confess I watched the movie, enjoyed it very much, did not notice you in the movie.
Unbelievable. All right. Well, I probably have a couple of CDs I can send over or DVDs.
Well, no, I'm going to take you at your word, but
on Netflix.
Rewatch.
All right.
So Rob, I can answer this.
Words of wisdom later on.
Yeah, all right, Trudy.
I can answer this very quickly. My answers may be longer, but I speak much more quickly than my husband. I would say embrace who you are, embrace being a lawyer, embrace this special knowledge and talent that you have, and know you can do this, and you really can do anything you want and anything you set your mind to. We have resources in our community to help you achieve your goals. I wish I had realized when I was younger that I had more opportunity to do things than I even understood were in front of me. And so if you're dreaming, dream big and make those dreams come true. And if you're not sure how to make that happen, reach out to your fellow lawyers. I know that Rob and I would be happy to talk with anyone who wants to further the discussion, but know that we're in a great community and we need to hold each other up and make each other as good as we are. And I can't thank you enough, Rob Hudson. You have inspired me through the years. So I thank you for the opportunity to share our thoughts and wish everybody well and happy to talk with anyone.
Well, a wonderful program. Thanks to both of you for being part of the series and for providing guidance. And as indicated at the beginning of the program, we fully expect and hope that these videos will be available for generations to come for newer and younger lawyers to learn from. And I wanted to offer a special thanks to our live attendees today. We appreciate your support. Our spectacular executive director, Julie Jones, is going to be sending you CLE information for credit. Yes, all cheers to Julie. She's a wonderful support resource for all of us. And as always, send your suggestions for future programs. Remember, we're always better when we work and collaborate with one another together. Everybody have a terrific day.
Wait, Rob, one last announcement.
Yes, of course.
I want everyone to tune in next season when I interview Rob Hudson as one of your own legends in law. Thanks very much.
As I've said, we have a very small committee, and I like to think that I'm powerful enough to squash that idea, but you're very kind for suggesting it.
You're too late.
I second that, Rob.
Yeah.
Thank you
very much for letting us participate.
Thank you, Rob. Take care.
Thanks very much. Bye-bye. Be well.